Quebec's economy has been a standout performer in Canada. It has a lower unemployment rate than the national average, and it's been the second biggest contributor to national job growth over the past 7 months. The PBO has said it's the only province in the country with a sustainable fiscal path, and its economic growth in the first quarter surpassed the overall country. Joining me now is Pierre Fitzgibbon, Quebec's Minister of the Economy and Innovation, who's in Toronto to discuss how Quebec and Ontario can work together to strengthen future economic success. Thank you so much for joining us, Minister. What are some of the tangible ways that you're looking to do business and further strengthen your ties with Ontario?
Well, first of all, Ontario is by far the largest partner in Canada, as you know, and the second largest partner if I include the U.S. in terms of Quebec export. So we have natural ties between Quebec and Ontario, and I'd like really to solidify those ties going forward. And I think there are some projects. We discuss, Vic Fedeli and I, projects such as automotive, which is very important for Ontario. But in Quebec, we've developed over the years the ability to electrify transport. We also developed some software capabilities to make the automotive more intelligent. So I think there's a logical kind of a pathway where we could be working together with Ontario. So unified would be much stronger than the different parts. Equally in the aerospace business. Now this is a primary cluster for us in Quebec with 42,000 employees, a very large segment of ours. Ontario has some capabilities as well, so why not work together and try to convince our friends at the federal level to have a national policy. So I think there's a lot of projects that together with Ontario, we can be much stronger together, unified.
What about on trade barriers? That's something that people often lament about, is not just trade barriers between Canada and other countries, but the interprovincial trade barriers. Did you have discussions of how you could work to reduce those?
Absolutely. Mr. Fedeli brought that forward numerous times, and we also had the privilege to be discussing with some business leaders here in Ontario that are involved both in Quebec and Ontario. It became very clear that for some of these people, it's an impediment for trade to have an unharmonized system for both Ontario and Quebec. And I committed, one of my assistants, MNP in Quebec, is involved with me for the red tape reduction. So we're going to make sure when I come back to Montreal that this person gets in contact directly with Mr. Fedeli's assistant as well. So clearly we need to harmonize between Ontario and Quebec, and I would go further. We need, as interprovincial in Canada, there are committees, or there's a committee actually existing to deal with that. So we have to move forward on improving that situation.
I mentioned at the outset that Quebec has been somewhat of a shining star in Canada's overall economy with respect to economic growth and job growth, and it's sort of a reversal of fortunes of a story that we've been following, you know, for the better part of 10, 15 years. And now when you look at a province like Alberta that is going through its own difficulties, and words like separatist or creating secessionist movements in Alberta are starting to crop up. Obviously, that has a strong history in Quebec. What are your observations of what's going on in Alberta, and do you think that they have the right or the footing to stand on to feel like they're being isolated from the rest of the country?
Well, I'd rather maybe comment on Quebec. It's going to be easier for me. I think one of the strengths that Quebec offers when you look at the Canadian provinces is our economic diversification. I think clearly Quebec has had the privilege to be strong in natural resources, strong in retail, strong in some other manufacturing cluster. And I think what we're seeing right now is having less dependence on some segment of the industry is working to our advantage. At the same time, though, I would highlight that despite the fact that we have a strong economic growth, we do have increased productivity gap between SMEs in Quebec and the rest of Canada, particularly Ontario and the US. But the beauty is that we have the financial strength. We have a pretty solid balance sheet as far as Quebec is concerned. So I'm privileged to be using those resources, but we clearly need to have a large investment made in our SMEs, in innovation, primarily in digitalization and also in 4.0 manufacturing. So I would, to answer your question by saying our diversification has allowed us, I think, to have a stellar performance in terms of GDP growth over the last 5 years.
Well, let's talk about some of those Quebec-based champions. I was wondering if you could give us an update on what's going on behind the scenes with SNC-Lavalin. In the past, you've said that Quebec would be willing to support the company financially if that's what was needed. I think since you've made those comments, we got the retirement of the SNC CEO and a new man at the helm. Have you spoken with the new leader, and do you feel like the company might still need financial help from the province?
Well, I think the SNC-Lavalin, the comment I'll make there is that I think we should commend them for what they've done to clean up the old ethical issue. Now, let's not talk about the DPA, for example, but I think they've done a great job to change the procedures and how they're going to be dealing with the issues of ethics, and I think that they're done a good job on that. The new CEO clearly going to focus now on some operational issues. They had some issues in some foreign jurisdictions, which is nothing legal, more business practices. So I feel comfortable that SNC-Lavalin is taking action to correct some of the deficiencies. I would also say that SNC-Lavalin is not in a financial crisis situation. They had to deal more with issue with their legitimacy, reputational issue. As you know, they sold a portion of the 407 investment they had. So therefore, the financial stability or financial situation of SNC-Lavalin is not at risk. The issue is more reputation and business practices, and I feel comfortable that they're going in the right direction as we speak.
Is there still hope for them to get a deferred prosecution agreement?
This is out of my control. I certainly wish they would, but I have no influence whatsoever on that process. This is a federal, obviously, initiative. I hope they will, but I have I don't know more than you do about the outcome of that.
Let's talk airlines and aerospace. Obviously, two sectors that are close to the heart of the Quebec economy. In airlines, we're getting some consolidation with Air Canada making a formal bid for Transat, and Transat recommending that shareholders tender to that. Are you concerned at all about potential job losses as this sector consolidates?
Well, my first reaction when the Air Transat situation arose was I was concerned about employment. I was concerned about the brand because the brand is kind of liked in Quebec, and I was concerned about the consumers. So as far as the consumer, that's going to be dealt with by the Competition Bureau, and I hope to think Air Canada will do a good job to promote the fact that the consumer will be protected. As far as I'm concerned, the offer that Air Canada presented to the Air Transat board that got accepted, speaking with the CEO, I am comfortable that the employment will be maintained for the most part. They've acknowledged and they've announced that they would keep the Air Transat head office in Quebec, and they also acknowledged they would keep the brand. So as far as the government is concerned, I think the two elements within the Quebec control, so to speak, are addressed properly by the offer from Air Canada.
Okay, last question. Before I let you go, I have to ask, how much is the province willing to stake out when it comes to bringing baseball back to the province? Well, listen, it's an emotional question. We made public that there will be no government grants to get the baseball back to Montreal. Would we consider helping the promoters in contributing to a loan or equity and so forth? We haven't had any discussion yet because this is kind of new, this potential transaction with the Tampa Bay Rays in terms of a dual city and so forth. So I'm in discussion with the promoters, but at this point in time there's been no formal request. I can say we will not give government grants to get baseball back, but we could be involved as a partner. All right. Thank you so much, Minister, for your time today.